You've got the data there controlled by the computer program. So the data provision, don't need a courtside anymore to get updates from television or courtsiding. Everything is done in real time. And this horse racing, it's provably fair. You've got the horses there which have different data points. You can set odds on it. People can watch on Twitch this horse race. You can buy and sell different horses. You can win prize pools, the sponsorship. They've just announced that you can now buy a race course. So you can actually own the race and have your own card for the day. This is where NFTs, where you need to be able to guarantee the authenticity of those horses through that lineage, this is where this comes into play, and this is what I'm most excited about. That's coming across to Formula One. It's coming across to basketball. We're working with a group in the US called SimWin, which are amazing Hollywood type graphics who are doing exactly the same, where you can buy your own franchise, your own courts, buy and sell and draft players. Anyone can have ownership in them, and then they'll play simulated matches going forward based on the data profile of the virtual player.
And we've already seen that virtual sports has a place in our industry, so there's no reason why this wouldn't grow even more, because there's obviously more ownership there. Stefan, you look very skeptical. What are your thoughts?
No. Tim's doing a great job for me. I'm happy for it. No,
I think disagree. For your point of view, is there a space, particularly within the casino side of our industry, where you think that NFTs will become more popular, whether it's through rewarding players or adding value somewhere? What's the adaptation that you would love to see happen over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I think game studios are sat on an enormous amount of IP. Okay, and they can look at now creating ownable assets out of that IP and either integrating it into existing games or creating new games. And they can also add utility into those assets. So not only are you getting a character, maybe you have a slot game which is actually made up of NFTs, right? And you're winning NFTs, you're winning assets within the game, which then you can use maybe interoperably across other games. And they also have utility in them. They might have bonuses. They might unlock other levels. They might give you money can't buy access to events or other things. So yeah. I think, I know the film studios and, the big IPs, such as Disney, etc. I think the gaming industry has those IPs, and it's a matter of being creative and understanding how to unlock that and thinking very differently, right? It's not about owning it. It's about giving ownership to the players and what they can then do with that. So I think there's enormous potential there. I think that. Go on.
Do you think that there is a benefit for us to overcome some of the over-regulation that we're seeing? So I'm not talking about not having unsafe practices, but for example, if a player was to go to do an online shop for their studio or for their operator, and similar to how they would buy a bonus feature, but now they can purchase an NFT and swap that NFT for 10 free spins. Do you think that that's a good adaptation of NFTs within our space, and how easy is it long term to actually have it work with the tech resource it would require?
I think we've seen the great example of the CSGO cases and how popular they are in that sort of younger demographic of, not obviously post-18, hopefully, but in that younger demographic of people, CSGO cases and how they've taken on a whole new world, and you buy and sell skins on guns. And that, in essence, is an NFT. I don't know. I think it's a centralized skin, but if that could move to a decentralized platform such as NFT, you've got a whole secondary marketplace there, which will increase the adoption of the usability and the entertainment factor from that gaming venture. So I think it's a net positive for the gaming industry. But it's interesting, I had the Premier League reach out to me the other day, obviously through our sponsorship, saying, Tim, we want to do NFTs. What do we do first? And there's a complete lack of
where do we start?
Knowledge. There's a lack of knowledge around how this is going to evolve. And I'm just worried about bad actors coming in and trying to push an agenda which is simply nearly somewhat Ponzi style, as opposed to having proper organisations who have a clear plan of what they want to do. And you're so rare in your Top Shot, obviously, are taking that professional approach to NFTs and trying to leverage it there. I'm just worried about those nefarious actors coming in and trying to scam people in the incorrect way.
And it is something that we need to focus on, the responsibility aspect of it, and the fact that we can't have it being exploitative within our industry. Another aspect that we need to look on is, I guess, the environmental effects. Is it as negative as some of the crypto side of things that we're looking at, or what are your thoughts on that side of things, Stefan?
I think on Ethereum, there is there is an environmental issue there, and that shouldn't be taken lightly. But there is a lot happening. So actually, there's a massive shift over to layer 2s. Matic has become very popular. Matic is like 1/100th of the energy consumption of Ethereum. You have a whole series of other blockchains that are now going into, mainnets are going live. And again, they are a fraction of the environmental impact. So I think it's an unfortunate short-term side effect of Ethereum.
But I think
Ethereum
it's like everything that we've ever gone through throughout history. If you look at anything, when the first cars were created, when we first started with fossil fuels, I mean, this is just a new technology. It's a new thing, so to speak, that we're bringing into our lives. But everything started off, and then we improved on it over time. And it's about having the longevity enough to be able to do that.
Look, it's interesting. We're just invested into another company doing carbon credits and putting carbon credits as an NFT, working with farmers and then having people who need to offset their carbon credits, creating a marketplace to buy those NFTs, which obviously you can guarantee the authenticity of where they've come from in the farm. So, I mean, perhaps we need to think about how do we use this technology for the green or the energy efficient, or to try and actually utilize it for a better purpose rather than worrying about what the mining processing costs and energy costs of mining Bitcoin. But don't forget, it's 10 years old. Credit cards were first taken in 1950, 70 years ago. We've got a lot of evolution, and the adoption curve is going to be absolutely rapid, and it won't go backwards. So we need to obviously keep an open mind about this, but also how do we apply the technology to the full rounded circle of the economy, not just where it might be bad, and create FUD.
Absolutely. I think what would be great to now focus on is for the listeners, many who have not invested in or kind of looked into NFTs. If we were to talk, say, if we were to give you both the budget of $100, what NFTs would you buy? Would you buy more than one? Would you buy multiple of the same ones? If we're talking to, and we're not, let's have a caveat, this is not investor advice to the listeners, just so everyone's protected. But if you had $100 and you wanted to play for fun over the next couple of days and really kind of start dipping your toe in the waters, what would you buy, and where would you hold it? Let's start with you, Tim.
I'm buying an ape from the Big Ape Yacht Shop.
You're buying an ape. Okay, you're buying an ape.
And I'd be using my MetaMask app or browser extension. I'd be paying with Ethereum, and that ape would be connected through into my MetaMask application as a collectible. But in all seriousness, I'd be buying more horses.
Okay, so Zedrun is the place for people to check out. And actually, guys, I did this myself. When I started researching for this panel, I was absolutely a novice to NFTs. I had to Google what NFTs was. I'm not going to lie to anybody. So when we started, I looked into Zedrun, and personally, I found it really interesting. I like it. I personally like horses, but I think that people would enjoy it as well. So for anyone else kind of having a listen, I definitely suggest that you take a look as well. Stefan,
what are you buying, Stefan?
What am I buying? Well, my advice would be buy something that you like, right? Or that you think you're going to use, first and foremost. Forget the financial side in terms of return. If you get one, great, but don't expect it. I think NBA Top Shots is if you haven't, you should do it, because there's a drop, I think, going on tonight. It's about $10. It's fiat. You can use your credit card. Just if you want to dip your toe in the water, they are, at the leading edge in terms of adoption and the user experience. So it's definitely worth looking at NBA. I suspect there'll be many, many others coming along, both in the sports franchise world and other industries as well, which will be equally as slick. And then, there's not much out there in the gambling side, which is a shame. And I hope people are looking at this within the industry. Gaming. I think the gaming world is fascinating. So I would look at things like Sandbox. Sandbox is a Web3 metaverse where you can buy land, you can buy assets, you can create assets, which are NFTs. And then you can use them in that virtual metaverse. And there's lots of other gaming kind of applications with NFTs, which are cheap, or you can earn them and you can actually use them.
And I think as well, 10 years ago, we were all kind of starting to dip our toe in the water when it came to crypto. And I think all of us wish we'd bought more Bitcoin and held on to it for a lot longer. But I think it's for people to understand and for people to learn about NFTs, the best thing is to start off by buying and just having a little fun with it, and not over investing, but just having a little bit of fun with their friends and coming together as a group or whatever. But I think this is definitely something that is here to stay, and hopefully over the next 5-10 years it becomes part of our industry, because we have been slow to adopt some other innovations and interesting technology. So hopefully we are starting to get to a place where we're doing that quicker. There's been a question in from the audience. Fan tokens or NFTs? Who is going to win the race here, guys?
I don't know, Stephen. You probably know better. If fan tokens are they're a cryptocurrency itself. Perhaps,
yeah.
I do believe having that sort of trading card mentality is probably a good way to do it. But the fan tokens actually let you buy shares in a football club, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, I think fan tokens are quite specific. And Tim, you're right, it's a cryptocurrency rather than NFT. So I think there's probably scope for both, but I would be much more bullish on NFTs because I think they've just got much wider implications and use cases.
The scalability, I guess, across multiple industries and multiple sectors is obviously far bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I love about it is you do have that decentralized marketplace. So OpenSea.io is one of the main marketplaces where you can go with your Ethereum wallet and you can buy and sell digital assets, and you don't need any notary or transfer agent or probably an oracle to help with the transaction. But we are decentralizing that buying and selling economy, which is great news, and I think it's only going to continue moving forward.
Fantastic. Quick one, Tim. Are you a little bit jealous of Stefan's CryptoPunk?
He should be a little bit jealous of my horse racing syndicate, I think. Because
I don't think it's too late for him to buy his horse racing syndicate and said,
I'm tempted to get a horse, I have to say.
What we want to do, we're buying a lot of horses for the Sportsbet syndicate, and we want to now let our punters invest into our syndicate, which we'll manage and race around the world and obviously provide odds on as well. So we want to bring our punters closer to Sportsbet brand and part of the clubhouse. And we feel it's a really good engagement tool for our punters to be a part of the journey with a sportsbook through our syndicate.
Feel like part of the story.
100%, yeah. So that's where I see the leverage from a gaming perspective, being part of that journey.
And I think we're always looking at new ways of creating a better user experience and loyalty and retention and bringing people into the fold. And I think that one theme that seems to have come from everything both sides have said is that definitely seems to be a way to adapt it into our space and look at it from that point of view, which is really interesting. Stefan, are you jealous that Tim's going to have apes and horses and racetracks, etc., etc.?
Of course.
It sounds like a farm as opposed to anything else.
No, I might have to go get myself a horse, and then I can race it.
I feel like everyone's going to go and buy themselves an ape after this conversation and just see what happens. Create our own little zoo with them. Okay, guys, we're coming to the end of our panel. If we could give kind of one takeaway, one soundbite to the listeners from both of you in terms of why they should look into NFTs more, why they're here to stay, particularly in gaming. If you can just give a quick soundbite. So we'll start with you, Stefan.
Yeah. So what I would say is, look, be curious, go out there and explore. It's a very new technology, and what's important isn't the technology, it's what you can do with it. So I think, as an industry, I would think, what are the problems that I face, and what opportunities can this technology give me, my customers, that I can't do now? And it's quite, as with all things blockchain, it requires a bit of a different mindset. Okay, so I think nobody has answers at the moment because it is so new. But go out, explore, play, get hands-on. Don't be shy about. I guess. Be curious and go out and do some stuff.
Perfect. Do some stuff. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's Stefan's soundbite. Over to you, Tim.
And for me, it's the Premier League, the NFL, the NBA, the Australian Cricket Board, the BCCI, every major sporting code in the world is now looking seriously at NFTs and what they can do. So my advice would always be ahead of the curve. Be curious, be ahead of the curve. So when the opportunity knocks at the door, you have your plan ready on how you want to bring it into your world, whether that be gaming, whether that be horse racing syndicates, whether it be paintings, CryptoPunks. Be a part of it and be ahead of the curve always.
Perfect. Awesome. So be ahead of the curve from Tim. Guys, this has been a really insightful panel and debate for me, and I hope it has been for the listeners as well. Hopefully we have many more conversations on NFTs as they evolve over the next 6 and 12 months short term, and then even longer. But guys, it's been really great speaking to you today. And I'll say goodbye. Thanks everyone for joining. Take care.
Thanks, Nina. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Go the apes.
Bye, guys.
Communication. It's in your words, in your body language, in your eyes. Communication is about making your mark and you being heard. Communication is the single skill you use most in your life. My name is David J. P. Phillips and I'm a communication coach and professional keynote speaker. I spent 7 years studying 5,000 of the most prominent personalities in the world so that I can understand and distill and give to you the skills that make a good communicator good, great and awesome. I found 110 core skills which can guide you to master your communication based on what you need. Imagine if you could learn and understand the fundamental building blocks that drive communication. I've spent the last 5 years compiling all these skills into a dynamic online academy just for you, with a variety of learning resources such as video, samples, games, quizzes, and so much more. The HeadGain Academy houses, of course, the 110 steps of communication and explores additional courses that I've developed through my life. The magical science of storytelling based on my TED Talk. Wow self-leadership based on how I hacked my own depression and truly leveled up in life. The Walnut Method based on G2D and how to get things done in life. How to avoid death by PowerPoint. These courses will help you become by far a better presenter, a better leader, help you level up your communication skills and overall help you to become an even better person. Creating the space for you to build powerful relationships and harness your ability to make an impact in this world. In your life, communication is truly a skill, not a talent. And the good news is this: anybody, including you, can become entirely fluent in it. Welcome to the HeadGain Academy.
Welcome back everyone to the studio. I hope you guys have enjoyed the first half of today. We're not finished yet. We still have a lot of exciting content to look forward to in the second half of today. But Pierre, what are some of the highlights of the day? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely, Alice. It's been a fantastic day so far. I mean, so many interesting topics that have been discussed already, and we still have halfway to go, you know.
Yeah.
But some of the notes that I've been taking so far is on the 5G session. I thought it was really interesting, the discussion around the possibilities of low latency streaming, especially, and the possibilities this will bring for emerging tech in the future. You know, the panelists talked about edge computing, which is just so fascinating, where the products in the future will basically become wireless receivers more than anything, where the computation doesn't happen in the iPad here, for example, it happens in the cloud, right? So just like we are buying cloud storage right now, in the future we might be buying cloud computing power, and your smart glasses might be as powerful as a supercomputer, more or less, and whatever technology that will spur out of that, and whatever the iGaming industry can gain from that is still remain to be seen, right? But it's just these possibilities that are interesting to bounce around with now. So I thought that was very interesting. On the NFTs now with the mighty, powerful Stefan, Tim, and Fiona, it was very, very interesting to hear. Great discussion. They all three of them are great people. I'm good friends with them. And I thought it was funny. Tim, he mentioned the future of horse racing in NFT format, where you can literally buy digital horses and race with, and you can bring them up, and they come from a certain bloodline that is based on the blockchain, and it's just a completely different world, right? And Stefan is mentioning the metaverses, where people right now are investing a lot of money into this like second worlds and these type of things. And regardless of what you think of the of this field, it's clear that we need to have our eyes on it, I think, and to understand this, right? And finally, as well, on the crypto side of things, I thought what Anita Brinke, the CEO of Congaming Group, she mentioned something very interesting, and she said, traditionally with Bitcoin and cryptos, the purpose have been to move currency, right? So you have one Bitcoin, you move it from one wallet to another wallet, right? And then it's the movement of currency. But she is making the argument now that for the gaming industry in the future, leveraging smart contracts, and where you can basically, and on the Ethereum network, we can basically transfer code rather than only currency. This could mean for the sports betting industry, for example, that bets can be taken within the blockchain, basically. So what that would mean for the customer is that all the transactions are completely transparent. And so also if you are playing a casino product, for example, all the movements of money could be done via the blockchain. So that just brings a whole nother level of transparency and trust to the player, which is important for the industry. So those are some of the some of the notes I took here. And I want to mention also one thing, because we are running lots of polls here today as well, right?
Yes, please.
And one poll that I'm really particularly interested in, and I'm keeping an eye on it, is let's see here if I can find it. Are you aware of NFTs? That is one of the polls here. And 50% at the moment is saying that yes, they are aware of NFTs, but it's just another bubble. And I would be particularly interested to ask the audience who hasn't voted yet to check this poll out, and especially now after watching the debate between Tim and Stefan, to see what the audience who now have a little bit more insight thinks about this subject. Is it still a bubble, or is there more to it? So keep an eye on the polls, guys, and there's a lot of interesting things going on. But back to you, Alice.
Yeah.
What do we have in front
thank
of
you
us?
so much for that summary. It's great to get some highlights of the day. But the day's not over yet. As we've said, we have a lot more still to look forward to. Just some highlights of what's coming up. We're going to have a panel, the end of the cookie revolution. What does the future look like for advertisers? Very interesting. This will be moderated by Toby Oddy, founder and CEO at Digital Fuel. He will be joined by Sarah Garcia, head of marketing at Simpler. And also Sam Bahar will be joining, commercial director at Tomorrow Advertising. So that's really exciting. We also have another panel coming up, customer acquisition and retention in the US. So moderating this panel is Daniel Kusleski, founder and CEO at Chalkline. He will be joined by Adam Fisk, co-founder and CEO at iRival Media. And Dr. Leila Mintas will also be joining, USA Director at PlayUp. And then we're going to have an industry insight, as I mentioned before, the future of digital marketing, moderated by Michael Peterson, a non-executive shareholder here at iGaming Next, and he will be speaking with Chris Harrison, industry head at Google. So we have a lot to look forward to the rest of the day. As Pierre said, keep voting in the polls, keep asking questions and commenting in the live section, and we will be back in a little bit with some more updates. Enjoy, guys.
Ideas start with an impulse, a desire of a notion. That unstoppable urge to create something extraordinary. Get your project started. iPoint International. Ideas start with an impulse, a desire of a notion.
Hello everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Right. Well, welcome to today's session. It's going to be quite an interesting session today. It's really exploring all the changes that are happening in cookie tracking, or cookies, not just tracking. I'd like to introduce our two panelists, Sarah Garcia from Zimpler, who also is the sponsor of this panel, and also Sam Bayer, the commercial director from Tomorrow's World. So, Sarah, over to you. Like to introduce yourself and tell the group what you guys do, and take it from there.
Thanks, Toby. Thanks for having me here. Well, Zimpler is a next generation payments. It's smack in the middle of next generation payments and open banking. And what we offer is a real easy way to make payments and to pay and withdraw money to all kind of companies.
Okay, and Sam?
Thanks, guys. And cheers, Toby. I'm Sam Bihar. I'm commercial director at Tomorrow Advertising. We're a media and creative agency based in London, specialising in digital and traditional marketing, in particular for the gaming industry. And my background is all in gaming. Before this, I was the head of global marketing at Marathon Bet.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's kick this off then. What an interesting topic. You know, for we're talking about a 25-year-old technology here, which is obviously cookies, and cookies are used in many ways and have been adapted in many ways and kind of manipulated in many ways is probably the best way. As I said, it's an old technology. It's due for change. And a couple of years ago, the browsers announced and the platforms announced different changes that they would like to do, may do, or can't do. And it's kind of at the moment a little bit of an unknown of what's going to happen. But I think if you frame it that it's an old technology and it is due to be changed and due to be updated, and it will have impacts on different parts of our business in gaming, but also different impacts across different types of activity that happens in gaming. That's from advertising right through to obviously, actual product, okay, and platforms and such. So over to you, Sam. What do you think is the biggest change that's going to happen this year with regards to cookie tracking?
Well, I think the most important change is going to be that advertisers are going to have to accept a new way of measurement. That's going to be the most important facet of any change, of any boardroom discussion for anyone in our space. I think that we will naturally evolve and work out a way as an industry of being able to target and being able to try and acquire customers and retain and engage existing customers. But I think imperatively and most importantly, how we measure our digital advertising is going to be the most important thing that we have to consider, certainly in the next year.
And so, what do you think the biggest changes are for you guys? Obviously, having an application, as we say, or a SaaS model. You're impacted slightly different in so much as you have an eye on the user. Is probably the best way to describe it. What's the biggest challenges for you and changes?
Well, here we are addressing a lot of challenges right now. First of all, the GDPR requires that companies need to be compliant with the user privacy, and also we have the iOS ITP, the Intelligent Tracking Prevention, that doesn't allow us to measure and to see what's happening on that kind of devices. And also, of course, we have the third-party cookies deprecation. And I think that will allow us to start thinking in a different kind of situations that we need to consider the modeling in order to measure the impact of our advertisement. Now we are not going to be able to have all the picture, the overall picture, all the data. So we need to find ways to with aggregated data to measure it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's been a challenge for everybody using cookies. I mean, there's just for our audience, there's two types of cookies really. There's a first-party cookie, which is best described probably as either someone that's logged in, someone that's on a domain name or a property, or somebody going through an experience of where you've captured them, online. They're in your environment. It's probably the best way to sort of go. And then there's a third-party cookie, which is a right range from a pixel to a parameter-based URL stream or any other data being pushed into the browser. So they're the two areas that are contested. Obviously, third-party cookies would go, which would really affect quite heavily the advertising space, because as you all know, we rely on following people from devices to different browsers and browsers to different devices. And again, we would use the term stitching the data together. Obviously, that's has some problems. It's not 100% accurate. I mean, Google have spoke about, and these platforms have spoke about AIs and also APIs to really bring this all together. Sam, what's your take really on the new technologies that are being, I suppose, presented at the moment to overcome third-party cookies?
I think they're currently a bit loose and a bit underformed, frankly, and I think that there is a bit of a scrap, particularly with ad tech vendors trying to overcome the major hurdle and the elephant in the room, which is their business model, as the flaws fallen out of their business model. When you think about the traditional ad tech vendor who's reliant on a cookie drop, and who frankly has got very good over the years of cookieing someone just before they're about to make a transaction, and obviously we've all been sat brand side trying to work out whether a piece of activity is incremental or not. I think that what everyone's trying to achieve now is to say, to talk about timeline. Obviously, initially there was this sort of universal ID. Everyone sort of went down this route of, okay, we're going to run with universal IDs. We're going to use fingerprint technology basically, or we're going to use email addresses to create a token. And then that was kiboshed immediately by Google saying, well, that's just overcoming the problem. That's just a sidestep around the problem. So we're not going to support that. And again, effectively, what people have said is, context and content is king. So the one thing we're able to do in a post-cookie world is that we're able to target cohorts. Google talk about their flock proposition, this federated learning of cohorts, whereby instead of targeting an individual, we group people together based on intent and behavior. In effect, for me, that's a little bit disingenuous from Google, because whilst they're saying we're not going to accept universal IDs, they are saying, well, we've got our own little workaround over here, but we're not going to call it a workaround. I think that effectively what the vendors are going to have to deliver as a proposition, as a new proposition for us to engage with, is something clever around content, and not just, I'm reading a website about sport, therefore I might be interested in placing an ACCA this weekend, but something that says there's a way in which this user has engaged with the website, there's a way in which this user has engaged with content, or maybe read content, that would suggest they have a propensity to place a bet. They have a propensity to be a punter. That gap hasn't been closed yet. All everyone's doing is saying, well, this is great because the users now, individual internet users have now got control over their own data. But don't worry, advertisers, we're going to just group user behavior together and you're going to target that. And actually, what's going to happen, Toby? The walled gardens will just benefit. All the people who've you talked about first-party cookies, all the platforms who have a login proposition, including Google, but notably Facebook and Amazon, will win. They'll retain a better chunk of ad spend.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of flows into you, Sarah, as well, and you've got the login in your application. Obviously, someone logs in, so you have the first-party data. The part that Sam raised there is, it's all well and good having first-party data, but if you can't pass it on in a browser or pass it on in a platform, you can't really knit that audience together. How do you see it working within your environment? Obviously, not bringing users to you, but actually in your environment. Obviously, you'll have different cookies being dropped to as a data point for example, conversion, or for placing some sort of action in your technology and in your product. So how would you see that working now?
Yeah, right now what we are doing is focusing a lot on the first party data gathering. I think right now, and all the companies, it also was the answer of the Google's answer. The answer to all the new solution after the third party cookies deprecation is the first party data. And here is important to improve all the great data platform collection to include all the behaviors that we can measure about the user in our website and all the interactions that we have on first hand with them, like the CRM, connecting the CRM with the website data, and also surveys that we can conduct through our users, and all that kind of interactions are going to give us a lot of signals that then we can use to improve our advertisement and all our marketing efforts. And also here, like Sam was saying, I absolutely agree with him. The alternatives that Google now is focusing the flock and fledge, the cohorts, and then for interest-based advertisement flock, yep. And then for retargeting the fleck, they are going to be quite an approximation, but with that we are not going to have. We are going to lose this kind of tailored advertisement that we are not now used, and this is something that I hope that in the industry they are going to appear another solutions like the one that Sam also mentioned, the Unified ID 2.0 from Trade Desk, and I'm optimistic about that, and I expect to see that kind of solution.
I mean, again, it's a trade-off from privacy, to behavior activity with cookies and what's going to happen. And certainly you've mentioned obviously Trade Desk's innovation, I suppose is the best way to describe it. And it's still not really backed by any of the big five, none of the walled gardens, and it's still a little bit up in the air. But it does solve a problem and it does help us. But I mean, the trade-off for privacy is a big thing. I mean, do you guys think that you're going to see more consent for cookies? Do you think you're going to see a benefit, a shift of value to owned media, for example, such as affiliate sites, such as big publishers or small publishers? What do you think about that, Sam?
I think the whole kind of position currently is a bit of a mess, because you have, as you said at the top of this call, Toby, to think that cookies are 25, 26, I mean, maybe slightly older, years old. Their original deployment 94, 95, right? So you're right to suggest that it's just such an old piece of tech. But where did this all happen? What's the timeline of this? And when you think about really what kicked this off, Cambridge Analytica, in my opinion, is what kicked this off. People suddenly realized that, oh, hold on, my data can be manipulated to change the outcome of elections. That's quite a big sort of media statement. And then people started to say, well, I want to have more control over my data. So we started doing things like cookie pop-ups and data privacy alerts and cookie consents. And on the whole, people just sort of accepted them because we're kind of blind to that pop-up. We're kind of apathetic to it. Just go away. I want to look at the end. I want to watch this. I want to absorb some content for free. And then that wasn't enough. So we started doing, third page takeovers, and the ICO have introduced, new rules in which we're going to show what cookies we opt in and what cookies we opt out to, and functional cookies versus analytics cookies. We're now in a position where I think the technical piece, consumers don't care about. They're not interested in what a cookie is. They don't care it's a text file. They don't care what it does. They just see it as this sort of horrible thing. It's tracking me. I'm tracking that everything that I do is being tracked. Think about what happened at the start of the pandemic in the UK, where the NHS or the government said we're going to launch an NHS app where you called Track and Trace, and everyone was up in arms as if you're going to track my data. And I kept thinking, listening to radio ads on it, radio conversations on it, thinking I can track anyone anywhere right now. I mean, you're all checking into parks and restaurants and families every 5 seconds. I know exactly where everyone is, and I'm an advertiser, let alone what the government know. So I think all of a sudden that kind of swell that Google obviously dealt with from a PR piece, but B, a privacy first piece, has led this to happen. I think that what consumers, like internet users, need to see is a simplified understanding of how this will affect them, because you can't have everything. You can't have free content without advertising, and you can't have relevant advertising without some form of data passback. And I still believe, personally, we're approaching the end of this, and we're approaching this being real life. Still don't think that's been resolved. I still don't think it's kind of consumer first enough, because obviously publishers and ad tech vendors are worried about their business models.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's going to be more consent? Do you think that the users are wanting to know more about what's happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think also that all the industry will have failed in explaining the exchange of value in the open internet. And I think that we need to learn from the past. And we did it really bad with third-party cookies. As Sam was saying, the people was scared about the cookies. They thought that it was something horrible, creepy. That part of it was, but I mean, then we didn't explain what was the purpose of these pieces of code, and what was the value that that all the users, all we are getting of this quality content for free in the open internet. So I think we need to explain in a very understandable way what are we offering, why we need the information of the user, and what they are gaining with that.
Yeah. I mean, Facebook's a great example. I mean, Facebook changed the world of tracking, I suppose, in a way, and how you target audiences and how you bucket them or group flock them together, or whatever cohort we use and wording we use. And there's a lot in marketing, as we all know. But I think that, Facebook's, people are looking at that as the solution. Okay, is understanding one point of entry of a user and giving them an ID matched by a telephone number, matched by telephone number or email address. Sorry, what do we think is actually really going to be the outcome here? Do you think there will be a universal standard that everybody will sign up to, or do you think it will now be put in the hands of the ad tech world to come up with bespoke solutions and stitch it all together again?
I think it's so dependent, Toby, on what you can get your business to buy into. I just think anyone listening to this who hasn't started having these conversations internally at board level with how are we going to change the way we do this is behind the curve. People need to understand what percentage of their marketing, and as a result, what percentage of their acquisition is reliant on cookies right now, and work out how does that segment of the pie change at the start of next year. I think that what will happen is that we'll reverse. We'll go right back to where we were probably 15, 20 years ago. And we've also got to sort of sit back and take a bit of responsibility, because we've had it pretty good for quite a long time as marketers. We've been able to, I need to go and get some new customers in Spain. Okay, I'll go and get some new customers in Spain. I'll turn some ads on in Spain, start learning. And after the 3 or 4 weeks, we start to make some decisions about whether we can afford to carry on doing that. We've had it pretty good. I think what people have to do is reverse as businesses. This is what we're advising our clients: reverse back, focus on content, focused on relevant environments to deliver your advertising. Wait for the industry to come up with some sort of universal method of replacing that connector. Because remember, a cookie A identifies who you are, and B connects you to something else. You're in market for something, I'm going to start sending you ads. That bit's gone. So I would suggest we reverse backwards. We understand how we're going to realign the marketing spend that's reliant on cookies. I wouldn't throw all of my marketing efforts at Facebook and Instagram and Google, frankly. I would still keep that pretty well spread. But I think that's what is going to have to happen, and those are the conversations that I think brands are going to have, operators are going to have to take individually.
No, it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting when you think about first-party data, and so obviously you've got first-party data. It's how that transition now will pass on for your marketing campaigns. How do you use that first-party data? And, you know, for example, you can load it into Facebook and create an audience, and you know, but how can you now do that across other platforms? And I think that's critical as well. Is how are you able to use first-party data, because that then comes under the privacy part of what we're talking about here. You know, and as Sam's indicated, advertising, you know, we can find anything about most people apart from, you know, your name and probably your DNA code, and we have had it good. So from your point of view on first-party data, how would you want to see it used? Would you want to see a way that you can pass it on freely via the big 5 platforms or ad platforms, or would you want better consent for it? I mean, it's interesting how we would actually use it. How would you use it?
There are several ways that we can use the first-party data. First, we can create the customer match audiences with our own clients, and then also create similar audiences with them. And also, we can use the first-party data to retarget our users. It's not as we don't have as much information as we had with the third-party data, but we are going to be able to do it as well. And also, we can. There are other ways that we can feed for example, the bidding algorithms with our first-party data, with the data of the users that have converted, and the lifetime value. We can all this first-party data that is also differentiating from the competitors. We are the only one that we have this kind of data, and is also is more accurate because it's ours. So we can give a lot of signals to improve them, or that can be used then in campaigns to improve our marketing.
Yeah. I mean, we touched kind of on Google's approach to this, and you know, they have an area in their AdSense platform where you can contextually market. You know, Sam's discussed you know, how content's king really here. What do you think about owned media in the affiliate space and, you know, publisher space? I mean, is that something that's now probably been elevated because of this, and the value of their traffic and the value of their propositions are a lot higher? Sam?
Probably. I mean, it's quite a sort of contentious word, affiliate, in our space, isn't it? Because really, you have affiliates who are revenue share and acquisition partners, and affiliates who are publishers who you basically don't buy on a straight CPM model. I think that when you look at sort of owned media in that space, and particularly whether you can do JV deals with publishers, I think that will start to be some of the workarounds that we as an industry will look towards. And as per usual, I think gambling will try and lead on this. We've been hit with just as many difficult problems as you can't deliver advertising in certain environments before, and we've managed to overcome it. And I think that affiliates will deserve and should have some credit for the quality of traffic that they can deliver. Potentially, commercial models will need to change alongside this change. But I think if you can own that media, that will make a difference. Talk about that, you know, that chunk of your marketing pie that is delivered again, or that is reliant on third-party cookies. I think a small chunk of that, or probably a measurable chunk of that, a meaningful chunk of that, can be taken up by affiliates and publishers. Yeah.
And so, do you think that in your space, more owned media would be a benefit, or more content-rich advertising would be a benefit?
Yes, of course, and also I think that we need to think that what we are going to see that is going to fading out are the third-party cookies, but we always can have the someone else first-party data. So I think this kind of partnerships with affiliates and with publishers and with different players in the industry, and having access to their first-party data will be crucial and will improve all the activities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose another thing to discuss in is acquisition. I mean, it's certainly a part of me and Sam's world every day. I think that, what do we think that some of the workarounds would be? I mean, some of the things that I believe will be quite prominent is own media, gambling operators having their own media, and also looking at, ways to entice people in, one word to use, but, bring people through the funnel that are actually, giving up their consent to market to and enabling you to do that. And one of the ways that has been done in the past, and Sam mentioned we're going back in time, is looking at free-to-play games or one step before the operator, but under their brand or under their domain. Do you think these kind of activities will become prominent more now this year, in the coming year, or do you think that there's other ways to look at it?
I think that operators for a while have been pushed towards becoming content providers themselves, the content players themselves. Particularly if you look at sportsbook, the sportsbook model. Yes, you're providing prices on a market, but you're also providing a dialogue and an outcome of an event, and that is great content. You see what happens when it's the US presidential election. Biden's at 2-5, Trump's at even money. It's a constant discussion around pricing and odds being the likelihood of something happening. And in the UK we talk about it from whether it's going to snow on Christmas Day to who's going to be the next prime minister. All of that has an odds associated with it. You listen to commentators sat on the breakfast couch on Good Morning Television, and they say, I wouldn't bet on that, I'd place a bet on this. It's part of our dialogue, and I think that this cookieless move could generate a real opportunity for brands to be their own content providers. They can grow a huge swell of traffic by creating their own discussion and using the markets and the trading team they have to be able to inform that. Yeah.
Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Sam. Content always has been keen, and I think nowadays and in the upcoming years it will be even more because this is a way that we can offer. We can offer webinars, or we can offer blog posts. We can offer a lot of activities that where we can get this first-party data that will help us a lot to improve our marketing efforts. The more content that we can, and not also to gather in this first data, also is a way to attract users, and also to use this contextual advertising that is based on what we are, what the website is about. This is another way that publishers can get funds. If they are specialized in very niche content, I think it will help them focusing on their own content creation.
Yeah, I think I mean, we've not got long to go now, but the wrap up with this is we've got to change this technology. It's changing. We like it or not, we have to adapt it. It looks challenging, but it's not something that can be not overcome. Will it improve people's experience? Yes. Will it improve marketeers and developers of product lives and ability to bring a product to market that's got all the touch points we need in it? Possibly. I mean, it's certainly getting there, but it does mean that marketeers and and businesses and app developers and web developers have to now be creative in how they look at the marketing mix and the customer journey beyond that. So I think that we've got to see where the value moves. Does it move to the walled gardens more? Does it move to publishers? And how does that work? But have you guys got anything final you want to say, Sam, before we wrap up this session?
I would say just you need to get this conversation into boardrooms. You need to get this conversation as high up the chain as possible. It's not going to be something people are going to want to listen to, but you need to start having these conversations now and making your own calls. Yeah.
And Sarah, anything you want to add?
I think we need to take action. The sooner the better, and we don't. There is no need to panic neither, but we need to start viewing what is going to be the future. And maybe I don't think we are going to. We are going to still invest in digital marketing, but it's probably that the budget is going to shift. So we need to address it.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, Sarah. Thank you very much, Sam, for joining us, and thank you everybody for listening in. I would like to wish you all a good day, and hopefully this cookie problem or issue or solution will resolve itself in the coming months, and we would all be happier. But watch this space. I don't think it's going to be that easy. So thanks ever so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I am Peter Ekmark, CEO at Internet Vikings. I'm very happy to get this opportunity to speak with you about how to get a competitive advantage using technology in the US. The question is, can you really count on technology to give you the leading edge in today's iGaming market? I believe that it can, though perhaps not in the way one would expect. Many years ago, while I was preparing to apply for university, I often debated with myself as to whether I should choose to do a tech or a finance major. I choose technology because I have always been intrigued as to what humans are able to do with it and the huge difference in between the speed at which we have been developing it versus its relative cost. Here we see a distinct contradiction in terms. The better that it becomes, the less that it costs. And the pace at which it's being developed is breathtaking. A perfect example of this was the fact that most of what I'd learned while studying at university was already obsolete before I graduated. Thankfully, a similar lightning fast development does not apply if you study medicine, and we should be grateful for that. So, what about the development of technology within the iGaming world? iGaming has been around, roughly speaking, for 25 years. That's almost as long as internet has been available to the masses. In the very dawn of iGaming, you were stuck with a desktop PC and dial-up modems. This, though, did not stop the industry from evolving. And Malta issued its first iGaming license in 2001. Think about that for a second. That is 20 years ago. Time flies. Back in those days, the tech had to be located in Malta and at approved data centers. the servers actually had to be sealed. Sounds old school to you? Well, I think we are going to relive a similar circumstance in many parts of the US in the very near future. And mobile phones, they were not really being utilized for iGaming until 2010. Bit of a different story nowadays, don't you think? Today, most of the games that are being developed for iGaming are mobile only. Big difference. What about regulatory developments? Well, in Malta, you are now allowed to use cloud services, but there are still regulations in place that require you to host some of the data locally in the country. The US iGaming market seems to be the center of everyone's attention at the moment. The opportunities are potentially enormous, monumental even, but so is the challenge. This is where technology becomes truly fascinating and well worth strategizing. Currently, iGaming is offered geo-fenced in the US and regulated state by state. This means that each state needs to be regarded as if it was an individual country where you need to set up technology locally. Remember Malta, same thing. This is mainly caused by a federal law named the Wire Act, local tax rules, and legacy specific to each state. Furthermore, there are states which require servers to be sealed and located at approved data centers. Sounding familiar? 16 states are already open, and 8 are soon to be opened for online gaming. But you will have to install your servers in every state and comply with local and applicable regulations. Operating and scaling up your technology in such competitive and highly complex environments will require a lot of extra manpower unless it's outsourced to a licensed hosting provider. Although the licensing requirements vary from state to state, they are typically divided into 3 categories. We have the highest level, which is the operator license. That applies to an entity that handles stakes, odds, and payouts, and obviously has access to everything related to providing the service. The second tier, which would apply to, for instance, a hosting service provider, is the supplier tier. We would then have to serve as an entity that provides software, hardware, has access to part of the data, or has a stake in the operator's success. The lowest tier is called the vendor license. That applies to an entity that provides goods or services to operators or service providers that not necessarily are designed for gambling. One can furthermore expect the licensing approval process to be both prolonged and cumbersome. And while on the subject of prolonged and cumbersome processes, let's not forget about the privacy shield invalidation, called Schrems II by the Court of Justice in EU. If you are active in any other market outside of the US, I would strongly encourage you to choose a European or at least a non-US hosting provider, as this is very likely to spare you from a number of legal challenges going forward. This is due to the incompatibility between the US Cloud Act and the European GDPR, not something that is likely to change anytime soon. Unfortunately, it is not within the scope of this presentation to delve into the details of this matter, but please feel free to reach out to me or check our website, internetvikings.com, for white papers on the subject if you have any specific questions regarding the Privacy Shield invalidation. Apart from the US being the hotspot for iGaming at the moment, we are also seeing a fast migration towards iGaming cloud hosting. The benefits are fundamental. You get lower cost, higher redundancy, lower latency, and improved safety. But perhaps most importantly, you get the ability to scale up and down if you need to. Simply put, cloud hosting abstracts away a lot of the infrastructure pain points for you. Perhaps you're suddenly thinking, okay, this is easy. Just use Google Cloud or AWS to set it up in Ireland or some other major European hub and run it from there. Not possible, I'm afraid. For a number of reasons, actually. US regulations, tax, and the Cloud Act, to name but a few. Okay, so what's the solution then? How can I use technology as a competitive edge in the US? To get the extra edge on the competition, you should consider the following as a baseline. Outsource. Please outsource and use cloud hosting services where available. Also try to reduce the number of providers to an absolute minimum. This will be so important once you are scaling up in the US in order to reduce the complexity and overheads. Make sure the provider you choose has a local license, particularly one that enables them to offer cloud services in every state where applicable. Also make sure that your provider knows iGaming and understands regulations and the implications of compliance requirements. I've said it before, please consider a non-US hosting provider simply because of the Privacy Shield invalidation. You will save a lot of time. And on that subject, automate as much as possible of your infrastructure setup, as you will be repeating it for each state that you enter. Ensure the provider gives you full access to the infrastructure APIs to support your automation efforts. Ensure also that you get the flexibility you need to scale your environment. And last but not least, use a supplier that you can call and that you can have an established relationship with. This is so important. So, to wrap it all up, short about us. Internet Vikings was established in Stockholm 2008. We are a European-based supplier of hosting, domain names, and online brand protection. We are ISO 27001 certified. We specialize in iGaming tailored cloud hosting services with hubs ashore and in regulated jurisdictions across the globe. We will be offering our full suite of services in all regulated states across the US in the very near future. We are currently active with licensed hosting for iGaming in Michigan and West Virginia. We also offer our full suite of brand traffic protection and domain portfolio management services in the US market. We can also help you by consulting on licensing and requirements, as well as sourcing equipment. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to hear from you soon, or to see you in person once restrictions allow us. Until then, please stay safe and enjoy summer. I will. Take care. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for coming to this iGaming Next panel. We are going to be talking about customer acquisition and probably some retention as well in the United States market. It's a very interesting market, and there's a lot to cover. We're going to focus specifically on the customer acquisition and retention. I've got two excellent panelists with me. I've got Dr. Leila Mintas and Adam Fisk, and we're all going to be having a relatively general conversation about what's happening in the U.S. So just as a quick introduction, my name is Daniel Kostelski. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chalkline Sports. We work on customer acquisition and retention tools. We've got a free-to-play platform that we license out to operators and to media companies. Leila, I'm just going to hand it over to you for a quick introduction.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, and thanks for having me. So I'm the CEO of PlayUp US, so I'm leading the US operations, US strategy. We are the largest fantasy sports provider in Australia. We also offer sports betting and horse racing and other very interesting products like esports betting and fantasy on esports, etc. in Australia. And we are on our way to get into the US. We are live in Colorado, going live in New Jersey very soon with sports betting and iGaming. And we have a lot of other markets secured and planning to take some of them live this year and a few others next year and over the next couple of years.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Adam, would you like to give a little bit of background?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you. Thanks again for having us. I'm the CEO and co-founder of iRival Media. We're, I guess, a media and technology company specializing in the wagering industry and focusing majority on the US market. We've recently launched MVP product, Dimers.com, which is our consumer-facing brand, and have recently just actually made a small acquisition in the fantasy space of a brand that's been around for a little while called FakePigskin.com. So we're excited to bring those two brands together. As you can probably tell, we're in Australia at the moment, not for the only reason being the pandemic, but we've got a team both here in Melbourne and in the US. Thank you very much for having us.
Awesome. Hey, congratulations on that acquisition. There's a lot of M&A that's happening in the US space. That being one of many. So well done. Yeah. Just real quickly, I would just like to maybe level set. There's 28 states now that have legalized sports betting. It's live in 21, 22 states. Mobile's a little bit less than that. And what we're seeing right now, and certainly over the past couple of years since PASPA was repealed on May 14th of 2018, is just there's a lot of marketing spend. If you live in a state, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. If you live in a state that launches, I was talking to some friends from Arizona here recently, and it's just you get inundated by sports betting. Every single sports team is doing sponsorships, and I just wanted to get and I'm just going to ask Leila, what are your thoughts about opening up a new state? How do you approach customer acquisition in maybe Colorado, or how should people be looking at customer acquisition when these new states open up?
Yeah, as we have a state-by-state approach in the US, and every state has different regulations, we're really focused on user acquisition with a more local strategy. So we're looking for the right partnerships on a local level. We know that a lot of the bigger players in the US do media partnerships where you have nationwide distribution. From my perspective, looking into the numbers, it hasn't really paid out too much yet, and that has probably many different reasons. But one reason might be that half of the states have legalized, or a bit more than half of the states have legalized sports betting as of today. So it's too early for us to basically spend nationwide. So we focus on local markets. To give you one example, in New Jersey, where we will be going live very soon with sports betting and iGaming, we have secured a partnership with the New Jersey Devils. So we are sponsoring. We have our in-ice logos there and other great branding in the arena, but then also we have baked into the deal hand in hand working on acquiring customer, because that's at the end of the day why we do deals like that. If you see some of the major deals that's been put out there, I don't really see like a big user acquisition yet. So it's not reflected in the numbers if you look into market share and deals been done. So our approach is more going local, looking for strategic partnerships, and basically spending where it makes sense for us.
Yeah, I think that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and certainly if you look at the history of some of the operators, that come from the daily fantasy space, massive national campaigns, and I think that we're seeing a lot less of that in the U.S. Just simply because there's so much marketing bleed, and if somebody is sitting in a state, for instance, like Missouri, where it's hard to monetize them, do I really care about conveying my brand message to that person? I would much rather localize it and focus that time, energy, resource, and marketing spend on people that are in states where I can monetize them. So I tend to agree with you that localization, I think maybe less so as soon as PASPA was repealed. I think we're starting to see that there's a little more finer cuts with their marketing dollars than maybe in the past. What are your thoughts, Adam, on state by state? How are you as an affiliate approaching it? What are the opportunities that you're seeing on this state by state rollout?
I think firstly, just to touch on the bigger operators, we still are seeing different approaches from all of them. FanDuel, really big above the line spend national-wide, but then going with, I guess, an influencer strategy, right from, Charles Barkley down to, TikTok platforms and things like that. You've got Penn, who came in and invested in Barstool, who Barstool would probably say they're not spending any money on marketing, but they obviously spent the money to acquire that audience. And then, brands like PointsBet, who might have these big, media deals with an NBC or a NHL, for example, but then they're also rolling out, niche products or, their points betting product, for example, as a point of difference as well. So there still is a very big range, I think, of different approaches there. For an affiliate, state to state, there's not as many barriers to entry, albeit we still need to be licensed in every single state to operate in that space. And I think the size of the market still plays a big part for us because you can't be everything to everyone, definitely. So you need to find, segmentation, whether it's locally or for different teams or sports, where you can actually get some cut through. I think it's really important. And to the point before around the percentage of the market that's legal, it is the challenge for us is and for a lot of affiliates driving a lot of organic traffic through SEO or maybe through social. You can't monetize a lot of your traffic as well because they're coming in from states that aren't necessarily legal yet as well. So there are a couple of challenges there with that approach.
Yeah, and have you found licensing a challenge for the affiliates? I mean, I do know that there's a lot of people in America that have traffic, they've got eyeballs. The question is how do you monetize that from into either sports betting or iGaming? Like, how have you guys approached maybe just the legalization? And then Layla, I'm going to come back to you and just talk about what are your guys' thoughts about affiliates as a medium for customer acquisition. Adam?
Yeah, so we're legal, we're licensed, I should say, in all online states bar one. I won't say which one it is, but it was too cost prohibitive for the potential audience for us, so we had to make the sacrifice on that one. And obviously Illinois, with the changes to in-person registration rolling back, has had some impact there as well. But we focused on New Jersey, and we built from there, and we continue to learn around different states that are delivering better customers or different types of customers. and around different events as well. It's, you know, whether it's a different sport or it's March Madness or something, we are seeing different customers or different states doing better around different events.
Sure. And Layla, how do you all look at customer acquisition from an affiliate channel? I think when we look at some of the deals that are the more recent M&A deals, Action Network being bought by Better Collective also, bought Roto Grinders. We're starting to see the affiliates, really starting to consolidate maybe some of the local and regional and the real sports betting specific sites. What are your thoughts about that as a medium for acquisition?
Yeah, so we see certainly a lot of M&A activity across the sector with the payment processors, with affiliates, with sports betting operators. So it's just like a crazy environment. When you look at the valuations, I know we have some of the audience are interested in investing into the US. This all happens for a reason, because the US will be the largest legal sports betting market in the world. So looking into some of the estimates that are out there, they go up to $60 billion in terms of value of that market. We are halfway through, but there's more to come for sure. So we will see a lot of this activity keep going on. And I think from my perspective, affiliates is a very, very important piece of our business and of our user acquisition strategy. We work with the biggest affiliates in the market already. We are just about to kind of like get it rolled out. Obviously working with Adam and his company, but then also another piece of our user acquisition strategy is working on free-to-play. Open secret that we have a partnership with Sharkline, where we when we launched in the New Jersey Devils contract, and we knew our logos all over the place through the broadcast feed, also outside from New Jersey, we thought like, okay, let's put a free-to-play in place and start collecting the data, because we are working on getting online. We're an online-only brand, I should say. We are looking to get into the market in every in the US, and every market that allows online sports betting and or iGaming, and it cannot harm to start building that user base right from the beginning. So we see that kind of like being a piece of our strategy. And then I said local spend, obviously. Overall, I would say our strategy is so different from most of the bigger operators in the US. And that's for many reasons. One reason is we are the new kid on the block. So we start into the market with no database in comparison to the fantasy operators that have been in the market for a long time. We have a big database of, obviously, through our market access partners, like in Colorado, we work with Bull Durham, we're using their database. But it's all kind of like at the starting point, I would say, at the stage. So we are looking for the best way to acquire users. And we want to be smart about how we do it. We are not in a position, and we don't want to spend like $850 million a year and just throw the money out there. We are looking to be profitable one day in the US. Not immediately. It would be naive to think we come in and we make money right away. But the strategy is to be profitable over time. We are a profitable business in Australia, which is a great difference to many brands out there. It's a very competitive market as well, very comparable with the US market. And here in the US, we are basically coming in as a premium brand. We target the mid to high-end customer base, and we do that by offering bigger bets. So our strategy is, and that's our slogan, your best bet. Our strategy is to come in with the best offering, the best odds, and we want our affiliates basically help us getting that message across the market. And we can only do that because we have our own risk and trading team that's been trading US sports for a long time. Funny enough, Australians love US sports. And so we're kind of like experienced in doing that for a long time. And we thought, okay, we will utilize that experience in the US. And we are in process of getting there. It's nothing that we do from day one. but we are in process of improving our odds step by step to become the most competitive operator when it comes to the pricing, to the odds making at the end of the day. Because if you bet like $3 or $5, the odds don't really matter to you. But if you bet like $10,000, then it matters, right? So you're looking to get the best deal in the market, and that's our strategy. And we know that a lot of bigger operators, they are reluctant on taking on those big bets, and that's why we feel like we have a niche in the market where we will find our place.
Yeah. You mentioned this word I'm unfamiliar with, profitability. Is that happening in America? Rhetorical question. Listen, yeah, thanks. And you brought up some really interesting points. You brought up differentiation. Running all the operators are running different races. If you're trying to compete, if you're trying to compete on spend, you're probably not going to win. And I think that we're seeing some pretty large, FanDuel, DraftKings spent $500 million last year, and that's only going to go up. But you also go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, and don't get me wrong, I'm very thankful for them to spend that money because they help educating the market, right? So we have a lot of people in the US that have not had any exposure to sports betting before. So they're doing basically the groundwork for us. So we're very thankful for them educating everyone, lobbying for sports betting to get legalized in all the states. We're looking for legalized sports betting in Florida and Texas, New York, obviously, and all the bigger markets. And they basically take care of that. And once the market's legalized, we benefit from that. So I think that's great that that's happening. And it helps also kind of like removing the last little bit of stigma that comes with sports betting in the US, just because it has been historically been something that was prohibited.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about players and education levels, acclimating. Lots of sports fans in America probably are inclined to possibly place a bet, but maybe are a little intimidated by that, and certainly that education level. We're seeing on a free to play perspective. Adam, how are you seeing maybe just some of the differences of some of the players that you're seeing come in? In the various states that you operate in, and maybe even just share some of the differences maybe that you're seeing from on an international level. American sports bettors versus others. Just talk to us about a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's kind of there's three types of customers in a way at a broad level that we kind of talk to. One is the new sports bettor, the sports fan who is kind of curious or interested in finding out about placing their first bet and what that could look like. And they obviously got challenges around in trust. Layla mentioned a few of those things. Is this legal? Am I allowed to do it? And what's the stigma around that? So it's really important to break that down. We've got customers who have been betting already, maybe in markets that haven't been legal, and how do we actually get those guys to start betting in legal and regulated markets, and what are the things we need to do to unlock that with them? And then you've got the fantasy players as well. People who have been using their skill, their knowledge of the sport, their passion, and been playing, with mostly FanDuel and DraftKings for a number of years. But how do we get them to start using that knowledge and analytics and approach to numbers to place online legal sports betting and maybe try some brands away from the FanDuels and DraftKings that they're comfortable with, because they've been using them in albeit different games for a number of years. So there's a few challenges in that, and I think what that opens up for affiliates and for media brands is really to work deeper with each of the operators to find the right customer for each of them. And Layla brought up some really interesting points around the customers they're going for. We need to make sure that on our platform the play up is getting the clear air and in the spaces that are important to them, and that we can drive the right customer to be acquired firstly, but secondly to retain them and to re-engage them. And sometimes we falsely think about affiliates as just about acquisition, where there's probably a bigger role for them or for us and for media companies to play in retention re-engagement.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think we're probably at that stage in America where, we're finding that operators have a large pool of people that have signed up. Maybe they haven't deposited yet, so there's a target market, to get them over that line on the deposit side. But then also maybe they come in, deposit 1, maybe deposit 2, and how do you kind of progress them down that player journey for the operators? That's a great point, Adam.
Everyone's going to have their main wallet or wallets to a degree, but to try and find different offers or different bet types or experiences that they can enjoy across multiple operators is part of our job.
Yeah, right on. So interesting recap on where some of the lessons that we've all learned over the past 3 years. Let's look forward. And unlike last year, I think we only found out that American football season was going to kick off in maybe mid-July, something along those lines. Not a lot of prep time, but right now, I know that all the operators in America are looking at, August 5th is the beginning of NFL preseason. College football in states where there are states in the U.S. where college football wagering is more than pro football wagering. And so when we look forward, and now everybody's got a good amount of time to plan for football season. June is pretty much their opportunity to get their launch plans correct and their football season plans in place. How are you approaching that, Layla? And maybe let's provide a little bit of color. To maybe the importance that you place on that football season. And Adam, I'm coming to you right after this.
Yeah, I would say it's probably the second most important event apart from March Madness in the US. So we are preparing in New Jersey, obviously, to go live, and people are allowed to go into the arena in full capacity again. So we will have street teams in our play-up lounge. So basically, everyone that gets into the arena has to come by, and we will have our representatives standing there, helping people to download the app and advising and just educating them on how to do that. So that's one piece of our strategy for New Jersey, and then obviously we are looking to launch Iowa and Indiana very soon. So we're targeting football season, and overall, we use that downtime now basically to improve what's out there and just expand our affiliate network, getting the right deals and partnerships in place. Right. And maybe one thing I would say, as you touched on learnings, I think what we see, and Adam touched on that, it made actually a very good point. I think in the US, everyone is focused on acquisition and not many are focused on retention. So part of our strategy is to retain the customer instead of going out and keep giving bonuses away and to acquire new customers. Much better to reward customers that you have already. And I think that's something we will see improving in the US over time.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. If you do a quick, last 12 months of the bonus, states that track bonus money, Colorado and Pennsylvania, you can see how much is being bonused to the players. You do see some interesting peaks, come September, August, September, around, people that are heavily engaged with customer acquisition, and once you get them, it's really important for you to be able to convert them and keep them. That's a fair point. Adam, what are some of the ways that you all are approaching the upcoming football season?
Yeah, firstly, can't wait. We just launched Diamonds just before last football season with a a very early stage MVP. So we've been able to build our product and offering our database and our communities over that time. So we're really looking forward to being able to tap into that. And I think seeing crowds back at games and greater capacity in sports bars, and it's going to see increases on TV viewership and engagement. It's going to be wild. So firstly, really excited about that. The things that we're going to focus on for us, and I guess from some takeaways, I guess, for some affiliates is that segmentation piece. You can't be everything to everybody. So for us, we need to find ways that we can deliver unique football content and unique football betting content that can get some cut through and play a role in the customer's betting journey. So we're focusing on some things there that we've tested and we believe will be important for us. Finding the balance between kind of long-lived educational content and short, snackable, digestible content, bringing people back every day. And they're things we want to keep focusing on as well. Increasing our personalized content to fans as well. We built a customer data platform to understand their behaviors, what content they want to consume, and we want to make sure that they're getting the content they want, whether it's their team, their player, their bet type, and then pairing that up with the right offer from our partners around that. And then and growing and servicing, I guess, our community. And the community is really core to what we're trying to do with our brands. So finding ways to engage them, reward them for being part of our community, and what role can our operating partners play in that as well?
Yeah, you touched on a bunch of points that it's about that community, it's about that localization. It's if people are interested in the Cincinnati Bengals, with the utmost respect to information about the San Francisco 49ers, they don't care. They just want to find out, okay. And if their favorite quarterback, is Baker Mayfield out of the Cleveland Browns, well, talking to them about other quarterbacks probably not so important. So it's really about finding that localized and sometimes that personalized information. Just before we go, so we've just got a couple of minutes. I just want to talk a bit about we've got football season coming up and sports betting is a bit of the rage. I just want to get your thoughts about online casino, online poker. If I look at the Michigan launch here recently in January was a really interesting case study, launching both iGaming and sports betting. And here we are after April's numbers. Online casino is 4x what sports betting GGR is. All the GGR in sports betting is actually just being pushed back to customers. Just take me through, Layla, how are you approaching your funnel and the monetization of customers? Either whether that's DFS, horse racing, sports betting, but it feels like everybody is really just kind of gearing it towards iGaming. And Adam, I'm going to come touch on that with you as well. Layla?
Yeah, so we secured a lot of market access on the iGaming side as well, just because sports is kind of like limited on when it takes place. You cannot offer sports betting without sports being just on, right? So casino, basically online casino, is a 24/7 coverage that you can really offer your customer. We all know that sports betting is a very low margin business. The margins in iCasinos are much, much higher than that. The revenue expectations are much higher than that. And then also, the market is not too established. If you look into the sports betting numbers, you have a few major players that basically own the majority of the market. It looks differently at casino. So sure. I think there's more movement to disrupt the current environment. And that's why we focus on that. So our approach is basically having one app in the US where you have sports betting and you have iGaming through the same app, same wallet. It's a traveling wallet, so you download it one time and then you use it in every state where we're live. Excellent. And then we add horse racing to it, which is actually another great product. I'm not sure if you guys are following, but fixed odds horse racing is just about to get legalized in New Jersey. Colorado's legalizing that as well. We have tremendous experiences in Australia on the fixed odds horse racing side, and we can't wait to bring that to the US and start working on that in the US with Dennis Drazen, obviously, who repealed PASPA and who's leading those efforts in New Jersey, being on our board. We couldn't be better positioned and more excited about getting that done as well.
Awesome. Adam, real quick, man. What are your thoughts?
I'll be very quick. I think you guys nailed it when we talk about casino. Our focus on the moment is definitely sports betting, but secondly, fixed odds horse racing. We've seen what fixed odds racing has done for the Australian market of racing. It's really opened it up to a new customer base, and something we'll be focusing on in the US as well. It really excites us.
Awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate everybody who's listening. Certainly appreciate iGaming Next for giving us the opportunity to share some insights on the U.S. market. Really interesting market, and as we mentioned earlier, it's really the first quarter. Thank you, Layla. Thank you, Adam. Friends of mine, and I appreciate your time and giving us your insights. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dan. Had a great time. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Ideas start with an impulse, a desire of a notion. That unstoppable urge to create something extraordinary. Your project started. iPoint International.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are and what you're doing. Today, I am so excited because we have, I don't know how to describe you, Chris. I almost sort of feel like saying the OG of Google. Is that a fair description? Sort of like the original gangster of Google. Is that fair?
I mean, that's one way. That's one way. I don't think I quite qualify for industry vet status just yet, but I've been around for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Simply put, my role is to be a voice for the industry in Google.
Yeah.
To help champion the industry and to help create positive change.
Yeah.
We've done that in a bunch of ways, but that's predominantly what I'm being tasked with.
For sure. So you have a very unique perspective. So you've been a poker player, a player yourself. You were 6 years with Betfair on the operator side of things, and now 9 years with Google. But so let's try a fun exercise. So if you take the 9 years at Google, and you had to sort of look back over the 9 years, and I'll give you like 1 minute to take us like from 9 years back till now, sort of the key milestones, so some of the things that really sort of spring out in your mind, the biggest steps of the Google journey, if you will, or product launches or changes to the landscape, whatever happened. How would you describe the last nine years in 1 minute?
Wow, in 1 minute. God, so much has happened that makes that quite complicated. So I think DoubleClick and everything that went on with DoubleClick was huge. I think enterprise search bidding products and all of that change was great in terms of just what was capable. Video has perhaps been the biggest thing. It was certainly something that we loosely talked about when I first started, and as I said before, it makes up a significant chunk of what I do now. Hosting live games on YouTube, allowing gambling advertisers to position themselves against those live games. Obviously, there's been some regulatory changes with what we can do there. Yeah, that's all been super exciting. I could get quite geeky and talk to when we shifted how AdWords works with enhanced campaigns, which went down. It didn't go down great, and trying to mitigate and manage that situation was a fun one. What we've done with AdMob and bringing that in, what's that meant on the app side as well has been really interesting. And then just automation and machine learning and everything that now means. Again, if I was to say video dominates a lot of what I talk about, machine learning and automation probably makes up the rest of it. It's predominant across every single thing that we do. It's go-to from a product point of view, and again, that dominates. Then we've got some policy wins along the way. Most recently, we managed to open the Play Store in 15 more countries, which is clearly a good thing. We've managed to do some positives around category opt-out, whereby users can now opt out of receiving ads for gambling and alcohol. A huge win for us, and helps us position the products as being something that's sustainable, for this industry. And we have a bunch of other protections that are built into that. So, quick whistle stop tour. I'm not sure if that was a minute.
No, that's fantastic. How about, I was just thinking, the move from desktop to mobile over 9 years, was that already sort of still quite big, the mobile side, or have you seen a change there? Or
well, clearly significant change, but I've always felt that the gambling industry was probably 2, 3, 4 years ahead of everybody else within that space. It very naturally fell into the mobile space, and whilst that started however many years ago with WAP or whatever else, I always felt, in working with the operators, there was never a need for me to go in and educate on the role of mobile, or have to go in and tell them how big mobile was going to be. They all kind of got it, and that was very different to retail, very different to travel, where it always felt like a constant battle. It felt that you were constantly up against it in terms of trying.
You're still talking mobile, probably there.
Industries. still, and you'll often get you'll always get the throwaway brief where they'll want to talk about. They haven't quite managed to understand mobile yet, but they'll want to talk about augmented reality.
Yeah.
That's always the interesting with some of those industries. I always felt the gambling industry just got it, and they were just hoping that we would move along at a pace that would allow them to remain competitive. So that was always a good thing, certainly for this industry.
Okay. Fantastic. So if we just look at the global trends, the shift towards digital, and sort of these two buckets, display versus search, are you seeing some of the same sort of trends where you're sitting, Chris? What's your view on the year that has passed and the year we're going through at the minute?
Yeah, look, it's a nice place to start. If you were to look at the market cap of a Google or an Alphabet or a Facebook or a Twitter, or Amazon, albeit it's difficult to carve out its media division, coming out of the pandemic, they're all considerably up year on year, and given the size and scale of those businesses, that's no mean feat. And if you were to listen to the Microsoft CEO, he'll talk to 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. I think McKinsey coins it as 10 years worth in 3 months, certainly from a US e-commerce penetration point of view. I think my favorite kind of throwaway line is that as to how it's been coined is the quickening and the great acceleration. We can confuse it as much as we want to, but more people are online. And many of our old habits have changed, and in some cases permanently. It's helped us to break a bunch of old habit loops, and of the numbers that we're seeing, a considerable percentage are new online users. If I was to look at my gran up there in Stockport in the northwest, she's probably now got five retail apps on her phone from having none previously, and she prefers to do the Friday big shop and have that delivered to her, as opposed to going out. So that's net new business. That's net new eyeballs. And I mean, it still doesn't prevent the horrible process that is returning something that's been delivered online, but that's just a beast that I think we're all going to have to live with for the rest of our lives. But what that's meant is that ad dollars will simply follow the users. And so when you think about the growth of digital, so if you think about marketing in general, advertising in general has taken a little bit of a hit, which was always typically going to be the case coming out of a pandemic as budgets were looked at. Digital has actually done quite well. Simply because the eyeballs have flowed more to digital. And then there's some cuts of that data. If you look at the travel industry in general, down for very obvious reasons, whereas retail and e-commerce massively up, again for obvious reasons. And gambling has done pretty well. It's been certainly from the digital side, and again we can cut it by the various industries, but from the digital side, there's been on the sports betting side, a perfect storm if you will, once events kicked back on.
Yeah.
And for the casino, bingo, and poker industries, poker in itself, was up whatever that was, 250% or whatever.
Yeah.
So in general, digital marketing, has come out of this in a positive way. Video perhaps I think video is perhaps the single best example. And by that I mean, if you think about consumer behavior, I myself, as someone who works for YouTube, had never heard of Joe Wicks before the pandemic. Now, I've probably done X amount of HIIT exercise classes. I didn't even know what a HIIT exercise class was pre-pandemic, but I've probably done X amount of HIIT exercise classes through YouTube, through my TV, than I'd ever done before. And when we think about, you mentioned content consumption habits, that's been perhaps one of the biggest changes that has helped to facilitate and accelerate advertising dollars coming online, because eyeballs are now watching online video far more than they ever were before. And that's been huge. And us sitting with YouTube, the largest, probably the largest commercial online video platform in the world, has been great for us. But that's typically what has seen that drive, and that's why, from a digital point of view, advertising spend has gone up, whereas in general, it's not quite the same.
And let's pick our crystal ball a bit. So what's going to happen now when countries open up and we go back to normal or new normal or whatever we call it? What do you think is going to happen to those consumption habits and the video consumption and in general?
Yeah, I certainly don't think we'll go back to everywhere. I think I hate to say this, but there is a new normal. And I think we're all somewhat comfortable with that new normal, albeit in different parts of the world. We would often talk to the future being here, it's just not evenly distributed. And I was on a call with some of our colleagues in Dublin earlier today, and they're still thinking through what coming out of lockdown looks like. Whereas for myself, sat here in London, we've been out of lockdown for best part of 2 months. And we're already starting to enjoy some of the freedoms that we took for granted previously. But I certainly am living with some new normals, and we see that in the search behavior that we see through users, and that's arguably one of the biggest arbiters, or certainly one of the biggest research units that we can call upon to understand what that new normal could be.
Your gran is going to continue shopping on Fridays online.
Big time. Big time. Yeah, and I can't see her ever going to a shop again. Just exactly. She'll fundamentally get lazier.
And whoever has been ordering food online to a much greater extent will not just suddenly stop and purely go to restaurants, right? So that the online side of food delivery will most likely also remain, right?
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah. And we see it within this industry as well. April's a difficult month to look at, given where we were with the lockdown and the cancellation of events. But sports betting queries in April were up 300% year on year. Whereas for April, from a poker point of view, it was down 65% year on year. But again, previously in April 2020, poker was up 220%. So we're seeing it a little bit in gambling in terms of how users are querying and looking for information and whatever else. But in general, I think we'll have some kind of hybrid future whereby people are just far more comfortable utilizing online propositions. Those that were already digitally native and those that were already relatively savvy from a digital point of view have probably gone a little bit deeper. And those that were perhaps new to all the experiences that digital can offer them will probably lean into a greater degree. It certainly won't become the new normal, I'd imagine, for a few generations, but they'll certainly lean in far more than they did previously. So this will net out with a far greater, there'll be a far greater balance towards digital.
Good. So one of the very, very sort of hot topics, if you will, is well, it's been going on for a while, but even more so is sort of privacy, third-party cookies, first-party cookies, zero-party data, all these kind of things. So let's try and set the scene a little bit. So Google has been quite sort of leading the field in terms of announcing stopping third-party cookie tracking in the Chrome browser, at least, right? So just give us the brief summary from your side. How is it on the inside of Google at the minute? Speaking about privacy, third-party Google cookies, et cetera, et cetera. What's the latest and greatest?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's complicated.
Yes,
it's very complicated. I mean, I have sat through up-team training sessions on what the future will look like and what does that mean from a privacy perspective. And first and foremost, marketing fundamentally won't change. There will still be, or you will still have to have a almost religious-like focus on the customer. You'll have to think through the purchase funnel. You'll have to work through awareness through to action and loyalty. So,
but there's no big bang, right? I mean, people get scared, right? Third-party cookies gone. What are we going to do now? A lot of people are sort of concerned about that. So let's just underline that. There's not going to be a big bang. We will figure this out. Is that correct?
We will. And there are a bunch of solutions that are already being put out there. And perhaps we can talk to that. We can talk to that in a few minutes. I think it probably makes sense just to set the scene a little with what's got us to this point.
Yeah.
And I think understanding the reasons behind the privacy changes, certainly from a CMO and a C-level point of view, are essential in terms of setting future strategy. So if you think, number one, users just lacking trust and just demanding greater privacy, there's clearly the need for some kind of change. We're now seeing that change. So point two would be the browser changes. This is where it all starts to get quite complicated, between Safari, Mozilla, and then what's been going on with Chrome. So that's probably number two in terms of the big privacy changes, in terms of the big browser changes. And then there's the big regulatory changes as well. And these would have been the big changes that really made the headlines 2 or 3 years ago. From a Europe point of view, it was GDPR, all about consent, ticking all of those boxes every time you go onto a web page. The US has their version of GDPR now. South America's got its own version, not necessarily South America, Brazil, and whatever else. So that's going to become the norm. So there's three big drivers of change between users, browser changes, and then regulatory changes.
It's coming. It's here to stay, and now we need to figure out how do we deal with this, right? And what do we do going forward? So segueing into that, what sort of consequences do you see for the iGaming industry when this is coming in, and more importantly, what are the solutions for the operators, the affiliates, anyone who's very interested in this topic? How should they be thinking?
So that's a really interesting one, and I sit here with my Google hat on, so I could give you the Google blurb on what does that mean for privacy. But I think fundamentally we need to be in a position whereby you have a business that is comfortable with change, and a business that's ready to understand, what's gone on with privacy, and therefore make adjustments in terms of your setup. So, if you were to think through, a third-party cookie and what does that mean? Well, the use of third-party cookie are targeting, personalization, and measurement. Third-party cookies have helped support the ad-supported web for a long time. They help publishers make more money. They help advertisers reduce wastage. And if you're a publisher within this space, let's say you're the New York Times, for example, and you have 6 million subscribers, that's a hell of a lot of data that you can work with. Equally, if you're Google or Facebook. So there's going to be partnerships that you can still try to kind of manufacture and build media plans around that won't necessarily change. So if I'm an operator or I'm an affiliate, I'm still thinking about my media mix. I'm still thinking through, well, does this drastically change from a Google point of view? Does this drastically change from a Facebook point of view? Does this drastically change in my affiliates? Perhaps not. Does this just drastically change with some of the big display media buys that I'm making? Probably not. You will have to make some changes. So from a Google point of view, for you to take advantage of most of our future technologies, you would have to have something called a global site tag that you're putting in place on all web pages. And that's something that we're monitoring very closely, because we know that's what will help fuel a privacy driven future. I'm sure Facebook have an equivalent. I'm sure Amazon probably have an equivalent. So if I'm an operator, I'm starting to think, well, what does that mean for us? And then I'm becoming, there's probably the need to become more comfortable with gaps in your data. That's just going to be the nature of the future. And when you're thinking about tracking, one has to get comfortable with this idea of prediction more so than precision. And by that I mean you're going to need to augment your data. There's going to need to be far more modeling. Certainly when working with some of the big platforms and when working with some of your media partners, in terms of how they understand, who's converted where. Because without a cookie to do that, then we're all going to be struggling. But what you will find is there will be some solutions that are brought up to plug the gaps that are lost through cookies. So if you think about targeting and prospecting, what you'll start to see is audience segments, and there will be clusters. Again, from a Google point of view, we have however many billion users across our 7 products. So we have the scale with which to build these clusters, and we can offer them as in-market audience. Again, that's very much prediction. You can offer them as affinity targeting, so interest targeting, and you can augment your prospecting activity with those audience lists. So again, you're not seeing any drastic changes.
So the targeting options are still available. It's just like you're saying, let's say less precise. It's clusters. It's bigger groups to make the individual user sort of disappear in the crowd, if you will. So you can't target that accurately. And then you said from precision to prediction.
Yeah, it's being more comfortable. This idea of the single customer view. That's not really a thing anymore. Certainly when you go cross-channel, that's not really a thing. When you think about multi-touch attribution, that becomes quite difficult to do. Again, when you're going cross-channel, data-driven attribution can still be a thing, certainly within individual platforms. But this idea of precision becomes quite complicated. One-to-one marketing, whatever it was, the right customer at the right time with the right ad, that becomes somewhat of a struggle.
Yeah.
So the industry, by and large, has a hell of a lot of first-party data. It could probably do a few more interesting things with that first-party data.
Yeah.
But it generally has first-party data. But
for the existing base, right? But I guess that's more the sort of the prospecting part of the equation. How do we find new customers, right?
Yeah, and that's where in the US, for example, even across Europe, free-to-play games starting to become quite interesting. There are ways in which operators and affiliates can adjust their model to think about products that they can perhaps put out there that might not well generate revenue, but are there simply to collect first-party data, to augment their existing data, to help them do more interesting things with. So, there are some fairly subtle changes that could be made as well. But the industry is in a reasonable place.
So it's about being creative. It's about getting comfortable with not being 100% accurate. And and
that talks to the cultural point I made up front. That fast fail, that experimentation type culture. Look, these are easy throwaway things to say.
Yeah.
But being happy at 70% accurate, or being happy with a project, being taken on, that's got a 70% chance of success. I think that's what we're going to need to see in order to create the necessary change to adjust to what will be, and again, hate to say it, a new normal and a privacy-centric future.
I want to go back to YouTube. You were mentioning it a little bit in the beginning. So let's talk a little about YouTube. For me, there's kind of two things. There's the content side of things. Really interesting to hear your thoughts on streaming. What's the future of content? Is it short form, long form, all these kind of things? And that could be really fun. Also, YouTube Shorts. I don't know how widely launched it has been yet, but it would be fun to hear about that. Let's start there. Content on YouTube. What's the latest and greatest? What's top of mind on your side of things?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, YouTube's a weird and wonderful beast. And, I alluded to, at the start of our conversation, watching Joe Wicks' exercise videos, helped maintain my sanity at the start of lockdown. And that's YouTube in its purest form. It's a home for people's passions. I like the NFL. I'm not exposed to the same content that's available in the US. Yeah, I know I can pop onto YouTube and watch Pat McAfee or Colin Cowherd or ESPN or the NFL content channel. So I'm surrounded by content that I want to consume when I want to consume it. So in itself, YouTube has a standout proposition, and the content that's on the platform has been through a little bit of a journey in recent years. If you were to think back 2 or 3 years ago, we probably didn't have the same level of premium content on the platform that we even have today. From a UK point of view, 15 minutes after every Sky Sports game, there will be a 6-minute highlight clip posted onto YouTube. 15 minutes to 30 minutes after every BT Sport game, there'll be a 6-minute highlight clip posted onto the platform. I had a chat with the NBA a few weeks ago, and they've been on the platform for 15 years and have posted some 80,000 videos, and they can now interact with 80 million uniques across the world. Again, it's mind-blowing to think about the control that they can have on their content, but also the distribution potential through a single global platform. And Byron Sharp calls it the first global ad-supported TV channel. And that's very much where it's at. And the content has been on a journey, and we're now in a place whereby there's the premium offerings, there's the behind the scenes and the fringe stuff. And again, I'm thinking about this through a sports lens. But then there's the player stuff, whereby the player can own his or her own content. There's the fan created stuff, and again, that each brings its own audience, and each brings an opportunity from an advertising side in which you can attach yourself. Arsenal TV, again over here in the UK, it polarizes Arsenal football fans, but it gets a hell of a lot of views. And there's opportunities for sports betting companies to perhaps attach themselves to those views. And from a pure numbers point of view, it becomes interesting how users engage with that content. Again, in the UK, we had 20 million people in December watching YouTube via their TV. That's a big number. 20 million people watching YouTube via their TV. In the US, it's 120 million people would watch YouTube content through their TV.
Roughly the same ratio, actually. That's interesting. One third of the population, roughly, give or take.
Correct. And that's okay, that in itself brings about, and again with my marketing and advertising hat on, that brings about a whole bunch of complexities associated with AV planning, and where does YouTube fit into that media mix? 3 or 4 years ago, it was the domain of the performance practitioner or the search practitioner. What YouTube sat, you could buy it through AdWords. So you deal with it. Deal with it and tell us about the CPA.
Is YouTube reach and frequency, or is it CPA? Am I trying to build my brand here, or is it hardcore performance marketing? What's your view?
I mean, again, if it was me and I was spending my money, I'd be using it for reach and frequency. I'd very much be thinking about it as a way in which I could hit 18 to 34s. We have 98% reach of 18 to 34s. That's the future of any sports betting or casino company, or any bingo company or whatever else. There's 90 minutes of content consumed on YouTube by 18 to 34s every day. That's out of 6 hours of total content consumption.
Yeah.
Live TV is about 75 minutes. And a chunk of that's the BBC, which you can't advertise on. So the opportunity is extensive, certainly from a brand building point of view.
So I guess where the conversation still sits, right, is if you want to reach the masses and you want to build brand, in a big way, then it's still TV, and YouTube is let's say secondary in that conversation. Are you saying now that YouTube, from a reach perspective, reach and frequency, YouTube can now match TV or even better than TV? Is that sort of the view on it, or is it more like being part of the mix? Like how would you say?
Yeah, there's still a balance to be struck. And I think at this point, YouTube is still a incremental option on top of TV.
Mm-hmm.
But again, within this industry, what we have to be considerate of is the complexities and nuances that are not familiar to other industries. So, for example, you would have the whistle-to-whistle ban in the UK. In the UK, you would have the 9 p.m. watershed. You would have the exposure risk of under 18s seeing your ads. You just can't stop that.
Yeah.
Whereas on a platform such as YouTube, we only allow you to target 18 plus logged in users. So a user must be logged in and have declared that they are over 18. So in itself, there's a protection built into it. As I've said to you before, we offer category opt-out. So any user can say, I just don't want to see gambling ads.
So they can literally deselect the entire gambling category.
Correct.
And that's it. If they tick that box, that's it. Game over.
That's it. No gambling ads. And again, these are the benefits of being online. So you get this convergence effect whereby, if we were to think about YouTube now being, in effect, a TV channel, let's look at it through that lens and use that as a starting point. Yet you get the benefits of targeting that comes with digital. Yet you get the benefits of the protections that we can put in place that comes through digital. You very quickly get this very promising proposition that should be a fundamental part of every operator, even an aggregator to an extent, reach and frequency plans.
Yeah, and something like category opt-out. My mind also goes to the creators, the content creators, right? It's a hot potato in the industry, especially the casino streamers, on YouTube and Twitch and the like, and sort of, there's a lot of controversy around, how hardcore can you be? How big wins can you show? How big can your average bet size be? For that to be sort of a good way of a good content piece, and I guess sort of now that there is a opt out of the entire category, I would say that speaks to thinking long term and build
is to monetize